afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's Wilmington Biz Talk from the Greater Wilmington Business Journal. I'm Vicki Janowski, and joining us today are two officials that are going to give us a check-in about major projects around Wilmington. Today we have Alison English, who is Executive Director of the North Carolina Azalea Festival, and also Amy Beatty, who is Community Services Director with the City of Wilmington. And we invited these two women on today because they both have some exciting announcements and plans coming up. And these are happening around the time where we're closing in on 1 year since the coronavirus really affected and changed our way of life locally and obviously around the world. I bring that up because there's this hashtag I saw that NPR is doing called The Moment. And it's asking people, what was the moment when they realized the pandemic was changing their daily life? I know there was a lot of different things we were seeing this time last year around the world. I distinctly remember that one moment being when the Azalea Festival announced that it was going to be canceling its events last April. To me, that was just such a monumental shift in like what we've gotten used to every year with all the activities and all the people the Azalea Festival brings in. And never in the decade plus that have I lived in the area had I seen those events get canceled down. So that was kind of the defining moment when I realized that this was going to be a thing. And soon, sure enough, events started canceling, falling after that. And then we, of course, went into lockdown, and we all know what happened the rest of the year and how it's progressed. So we wanted to talk about a couple projects that may be on the horizon as life possibly starts getting back a little bit closer to what a new normal might be, even as that's trickling out slowly. So just to start us off on that note, Alison, I know you joined us last year on Biz Talk as well to talk about how you were adjusting with all the plans. But as you're going into this year's season and with the April events was traditionally when the week-long Azalea Festival happens, can you just give us an update on what it's been like for you guys in planning for this year's different version of the festival?
Sure. So I guess we'll go all the way back to the moment that you were speaking of, Vicki. You know, we canceled the events in April of 2020, but really we postponed them because, you know, back in the beginning, nobody knew that this would go on for a year. You know, it was kind of phrased to us that it was going to be kind of a 2-week stop the curve kind of thing. I don't think any of us envisioned we would still be sitting here in this situation today, but back in that moment, we had postponed our concerts and our events and the street fair and the parade, and the city worked so diligently with us on getting us a date in the fall of 2020, which, as we all know, got postponed again. That did not happen. And so we were excited for April 2021. We thought for sure we would be ready to have that big annual celebration. And of course, unfortunately, we still quite aren't there yet in our state and in our country, but we are still celebrating this April in kind of hybrid represented ways and hoping to push out those larger events again to July and August of 2021.
And Alison, it's not lost on us that your Zoom background is from an Azalea concert, which is one of those things that brings hundreds of people in for shows. And it's a strange thing to think about sitting with a group of 100 people, because it's been a year since then we've done that with concerts. But can you give us an update? There was some recent news on what you guys are planning for the concerts this year, and then that's going to tie into our update with Amy on where you're holding the concerts.
Absolutely. So, you know, we obviously are working with nationally touring artists when we work on bringing those concerts into Wilmington. And, you know, they, like everybody else, everything has been postponed for 12 months now for them. So we knew back in late summer last year that if we weren't going to be able to move forward with these events in April, we needed to get on their calendars early. There was a lot of talk in the industry that Q3 and Q4 of 2021 and then leading into 2022, assuming things open back up again, we're going to be chock full of events and all of these reschedules happening in those quarters, which we're all super excited about. But of course, we wanted to make sure that the Azalea Festival in Wilmington wasn't left out of that. So we started really back in the fall, kind of brainstorming, trying to gauge the future to see if we really could have these in April. And if we didn't think that we could, pushing those out and getting on those bands dates. For us, back at the venue at the Short Center, it was important for us to have the concerts be in the same weekend because we were essentially having to build our own venue. So we couldn't, and that takes a whole week to do. A lot of people don't know that, that Short Center parking lot is a parking lot, and we have an amazing volunteer team that spends literally a week out there. They're sunburned, they're hot, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of people, a lot of vendors that come together to put that together, but we can't build that one weekend for one band and then build it again 3 weekends later for another band. So it's important that our bands have schedules lined up that we could do everything in the same weekend. Well, when we were starting to consider having to move again from April, I kind of came to the realization that city venue was supposed to be done by June. So if we pushed it out a little bit later, we might have an opportunity to use that venue that the city has opened up for us. And that kind of helped us. Thankfully, graciously, somehow we were able to get all the bands still to be in the same weekend again. But that's certainly going to open us up to better opportunities in the future should something like this, a band have to cancel in the future for us.
And let's talk about that venue with Amy for a little bit. So for years now, and I remember when it was first just on the planning stages, the city's been talking about developing North Waterfront Park on 6 acres on the Cape Fear River downtown. And now it seems like it's coming closer to the finish line. Is that what you're seeing, Amy? And as part of that park, the amphitheater that Alison's talking about for the concerts.
Yes, absolutely. And first of all, just let me say that, Vicki, I echo your comments at the beginning when you talked about the moment that you realized that this pandemic was something real and something different was when the Azalea Festival announced that they were postponing their events. That was the same for me, and that was like a gut punch. So it's so fitting that Azalea Festival concert is the first event announced at North Waterfront Park because we have such a long history and partnership between the city of Wilmington and Azalea Festival that I couldn't have written the script better that they're going to be the first event out there. But yes, we are nearing the goal line on the project, and you're correct in that it's been a long process. The city purchased the property way back in 2013. I can't believe it's been that long. And then we began design in earnest with our wonderful consultant, Hargraves Jones, and our construction contractor, Clancy and Days, and Live Nation and the city back in 2017, and began construction in December of 2019. And we are on pace to complete the project in June of 2021. This year, the weather this winter hasn't been favorable. We've had a lot of rain, but the contractors and their subcontractors have been at it constantly, and the schedule has really only slid just a couple of weeks due to weather. And fortunately, we haven't seen any COVID impacts that caused any delays. We've been very fortunate in that regard. There are incredibly long lead times on some materials, getting them to the site that's affecting other construction projects. And our team they're just so professional and have planned everything and executed everything so well that, they've planned for those long lead times, and we are on pace to open June 2021. So couldn't be more excited.
And I should remind everyone, if you have questions, we'll keep an eye on the stream, and I will pass them along to Alison and Amy while we have them here for the next 10-15 minutes. But Amy, so you mentioned construction materials, which I know a lot of people in the building industry around here have cited as a challenge, and of course the weather. But overall, project-wise, what have been some of the other challenges you guys have had to get through in order to get this close to finishing it?
Well, really, most of the challenges came prior to construction. when the, one of the things that hasn't been slowed by COVID in the Wilmington and southeastern North Carolina area is construction. Prior to COVID, the economy was full steam ahead. We were coming off of the effects of Hurricane Florence, and those two factors combined really were affecting the construction market in Wilmington in ways we had previously never seen. And just due to a supply and demand nature, the construction prices were going through the roof. So our challenges were really on the front end, and how are we going to pay for this project? And City Council, Wilmington City Council was so supportive of this project that they appropriated the additional funds needed to make the project happen. Knowing that it was more than a park, it's really an economic development project, and has proved so as a catalyst for development around the park. I mean, there are 865 residential units that are have been constructed or in the planning process or in the process of being constructed surrounding the park. And it's so cool that this park is surrounded by all that. It'll really be their front lawn, so to speak. So, having surpassed that, pre-construction, construction, knock on wood, has gone fairly smoothly so far. And we've been very lucky to have added a few additional items to the park through some sponsorships. We had to look at, when we were looking at the soaring costs, what can we possibly take out of the project that would be easy to put back in later on. And two of those were scaling back a little bit on the West Gardens, which is an area just coming off of the Riverwalk access to in the southern side of the park, removing a few of those garden features, and then scaling back a little bit on the playground with the pieces of equipment that we knew that we could come back in later and install, and also changing the playground surface from a really cool modern rubberized surface to a traditional mulch surface. And we were so fortunate that we've developed some sponsorship partnerships with the North Carolina State Ports, which we were able to install some public art into that West Garden area with a really cool sculpture and interpretive signage that uses reclaimed steel from an old warehouse from the port site where they used to build ships. And so those are going to be installed in the West Garden due to that sponsorship. And then Corning Credit Union has sponsored the playground. And so we're now able to do that full build out of the playground as originally designed. So super excited about those two things.
And how about let's talk a little bit then about the amphitheater itself. So size wise and comparison wise, just so we can picture it, how does it compare to, say, like Greenfield Lake Amphitheater or other existing venues we have here?
Well, the Hugh Morton Amphitheater at Greenfield Lake has a capacity of 1,200, and North Waterfront Park will have a capacity of 6,800. And I get questions from folks time to time, obviously our amphitheater at Greenfield is beloved, and people don't want to see that concert opportunity go away. And people get concerned about, will this replace Greenfield? And no, it will only enhance it. I mean, I think that's just evidenced by the fact that the two are both managed by Live Nation now. And so they know that the two will only enhance one another, and that we'll see both of those prosper. And if anybody has a chance and they haven't done so, go take a walk on the Riverwalk and take a look at that stage. It's just beautiful and impressive, and really people can see and understand the scale, even though the park is still under construction. Just looking at that stage, what that's going to mean for concerts and events in this area. Live Nation Worldwide is planning on resuming full concert schedules midsummer. And obviously, that's a moving target. hope springs eternal. It looks like, you know, the data that's coming in is that we're on the downside of this thing. But obviously it's a moving target, and Live Nation is working district by district with local health departments very closely. But they are confident right now of resuming concerts midsummer. And the city is planning for a grand opening event in early July.
And Alison, I know you are, I'm sure, talking with the city in constant communication with these events you guys are looking at this year. So what is the way you guys are going about planning in terms of is the concerts or any of the large gathering events? Or do you have to be flexible in terms of what guidelines are in place then? Or I know last year we talked about some of the other festival organizations that you talk with your colleagues in the industry, you know, talking about in terms of crowd control and distancing and things. How do you plan for the unknown, not knowing what August is going to look like with all those rules and protocols?
Certainly, like Amy mentioned, I mean, it's a moving target, right? We were sitting in this position last summer. The Azalea Festival is part of the International Festival and Events Association. I sit on the board of the foundation of that organization, and you know, even last summer, there were reopening guides that were coming out for venues. And those are going to look totally different this summer, right? Just as more knowledge comes in and, you know, as the vaccine is getting rolled out, we're just keeping an eye on everything. And, you know, obviously we're always going to do what's in the best interest of safety for all of our guests, for the band, for everybody involved. So we'll be following closely our governor's guidelines and, you know, doing the best that we can to keep everybody safe while they're going out and enjoying life again, right?
What's the initial response been like since you guys announced a couple of weeks ago the dates for the new concerts, as well as some of the other events? I know I keep talking about the concerts because those are the ones I would think you can tell what the demand is for out there, whether people want to do a large event again like that. What have you seen from ticket purchases or ticket interest?
It's been incredible, Vicki. You know, we honestly were in a unique kind of situation. Not only were we changing our dates, but we also are changing venues, and we also added a second Avett Brothers show. And honestly, you know, not to show my hand, but we had already sold out the new amphitheater attendance with our first Avett Brothers show. So we kind of were forced to go ahead and add a second show, which was great because we know the demand is there for the Avett Brothers. But with this new venue, there are different upgrade options available. There's VIP areas, there's seating that's going to be available at this park, all things that are different from our old venue. So we wanted to make sure that we allowed all of the current ticket purchasers first rights and first opportunities to those upgrades. We had allotted ourselves 3 weeks to go through that for everybody, and we didn't meet that goal. So essentially, tickets were supposed to go on sale last Saturday back to the general public for those seats. And we held that off. Tickets are going to go back on sale this Saturday at 10 a.m. Just to give us time to go through all of those upgrade requests, people that are wanting to, you know, change show dates for the Avett Brothers. But the demand is there. People are excited. People are ready to buy those tickets. And the Avett Brothers especially, they have such a huge fan base, loyal fan base. People travel from all over to see them. So we're expecting sellout shows for those.
Now, are you planning also to do other events in April when you would traditionally have the festival dates?
Yeah, so we are still having Queen Azalea. She is a North Carolina resident, which is, you know, just because of travel restrictions and everything, we thought it would be great to have somebody local. She's from North Carolina. She'll be driving into town. She's going to be an amazing representative for us. And she'll be here festival week in April. And we are doing a different kind of lineup of events since our street fair and parade and concerts have all been pushed out. So we are essentially doing a Queen's Coronation, a journey of 74 socially distant waves. And we'll be taking Queen Azalea to 74 stops, being that it's the Azalea Festival's 74th year. And we'll be taking her to sponsors. We'll actually be taking her to North Waterfront Park. Really kind of a media tour, not, you know, encouraging people to gather, but but really just her thanking our sponsors, taking photos. So we can really try to, celebrate spring, celebrate the beauty of the community, highlight some historic and wonderful places in Wilmington. And then we'll also be doing our porch parade, which we're super excited about. This got a lot of attention just a couple weeks ago at Mardi Gras. So of course, Mardi Gras in New Orleans is famed for all of their parades. Well, since they couldn't have them, their citizens, their community decided to decorate all of their porches and had the spectators drive through to look at them. And it's kind of like a reverse parade concept. So we're doing the same thing. We're doing Azaleas on Tour. We're asking community citizens and businesses to decorate their windows, their porches, their sidewalks, their front doors, and we'll place them on a map, and people can go around and look at all of the beautifully decorated areas for spring. And we'll take Queen Azalea to some of those porches and areas as well. Just a way to engage the community and get people out and about safely.
And you should point out, you keep, it's a mysterious her and queen because you haven't announced who it'll be this year, right?
That's correct. We are doing that on Monday. We're super excited.
And so when we're talking about all these events, going back to you, Amy, are there other things that are on the schedule for the park? You mentioned aiming for a July opening. Are there other concerts that have been announced yet for that lineup?
There are no concerts other than Azalea Festival that have been announced. Live Nation is booking concerts. Like I said before, they anticipate resuming midsummer, so there likely could be a concert prior to the Azalea Festival's concert, but those haven't been announced yet. The concert industry, I mean, is fascinating, and I guess Alison can probably speak to this, having done it. It's a pretty complex process, and because of that, sometimes you're booking 2 to 3 years in advance, believe it or not. So yes, concerts are being booked, as well as city events. There will continue to be civic events held in the park that may involve Live Nation or may just be, city produced events. When you think about the Ironman, triathlon resuming, and just other traditional events that we've shoehorned downtown at Riverfront Park, trying to get away from closing streets, interrupting commerce, et cetera. Now that we have this beautiful 6.5 acre park that everything can be contained, everything is on site produced. Alison spoke earlier about the week-long production it takes to set up their previous concerts at the Cape Fear Community College parking lot. People have no idea, when you're attending a concert, what went into that prior to building a stage, bringing in portable restrooms, building a fence, the AV that goes into it. So we're just thrilled that we have this flagship urban park now that is really, I think, deserved by Wilmington. I mean, Charlotte has Romare Bearden Park, and Greensboro has La Boer Park that just represent their cities so well. And, Wilmingtonians love their green space and love their outdoor space. And I think that, this park is going to be so well used and treasured by our residents and visitors, and just so grateful for the public support of the Parks Bond back in 2016 and City Council's support as well.
I'm kind of curious what both of you have heard from your colleagues, and we can round it out on our talk today. But just either from other cities or health departments, Amy or Alison, you mentioned being involved with International Festivals and Events Association. Are you all hearing similar timelines from your counterparts in other cities, either within North Carolina or other parts of the country, in terms of them looking toward event planning again? Does it still seem very case by case, depending on what part of the country you're talking to?
I guess I'll start. I would say it's very case by case. Obviously some cities and states have suffered more than others. When you think about New York and California, I think we're luckily in a far better position than they are. Obviously, safety is first and foremost. Fortunately, it looks like if you look at the science and the data that we're on the downside of this, we have seen just, for example, locally here within our department, our registration for indoor activities was obviously limited, and the registration for, say, our local basketball leagues that take place at the MLK Center, those numbers were down under, what we were allowed, just to, because obviously families are feeling cautious. But on a promising note, we've seen that registration for our outdoor spring sports has surpassed what it has in years past. So obviously, I think that people are ready to get outside and resume, normal activities to the extent that we can. Our city attorney's office has done, in my opinion, a superb job of interpreting governor's orders and being in constant touch with the governor's office on what we can plan for. Some things don't always necessarily fit into a box that you can refer back to in the governor's orders. For example, road races are one of those, where we've obviously been very successful in being a destination for some nationally and internationally recognized road races. And those don't fit into a box in the executive order. So we're constantly in communication with our race directors and the governor's office on, what we can do. And I'm happy to say that the Wilmington Marathon, formerly Raceville Beach Marathon, that typically takes place in March of every year, was obviously canceled last year. We are going forward with that this April in a modified fashion, obviously. So, it is going to be a case-by-case basis, and, constantly having those check-ins with our local county health department, the attorney's office, and the governor's administration, to make sure that we're doing things safely. But I'm an eternal optimist, and so I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to get out of this sooner rather than later.
Alison, what do you hear from the event industry?
Yeah, I'll absolutely echo Amy's sentiments there. Every situation is different. Every community is different. Every state is different. The resources that the festival may have is different. The help or the support from the city in every situation is different. We've just been very blessed that the city has worked so closely with us to try to make, our events happen in a safe way whenever we can. But I know that there are certain places who've decided to push out events until 2022 because that's what made the most sense for their communities. For us and for a lot of other events, we've really been looking at kind of what we're calling hybrid or represented event ideas. So, some virtual, some smaller in-person opportunities, and then of course pushing those larger events off until later in the year when you can do those more safely. One example of that, speaking of races, the Azalea Festival is just getting ready to announce in the next couple of days that we will be doing a virtual Azalea Festival Sun Run, where we're encouraging people to sign up, get their race t-shirt, and go run a 5K anywhere they want on the beach, send in their times to us, and then they can win some concert tickets, things like that. So ways to still engage the community, but to still do that, on an individual or small family group size capacity, getting out and doing things, but doing those in smaller groups more safely.
I want to thank both you guys for joining us today and giving us this forward-looking idea of what maybe the summer is going to look like around Wilmington. I appreciate both your time. And as I mentioned earlier, if you pick up tomorrow's newest edition of the Business Journal, we'll have a cover story on looking at what the last year has been like, particularly for the economic impacts and on the business community. You'll also find coverage or more information with Alison about what their plans are throughout this year in terms of the Azalea Festival and details that we were talking about some today. One other note, keep an eye out for an announcement from the Business Journal. We have a topic in mind for our next Power Breakfast along the lines of this new normal or new normal. And we want to get some feedback from you guys, from our readers, about what might make good topics for that and what our world might look like if we do get on the other side of this year that we've had. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed having lunch with us. Next week, we'll be back on Thursday, same time, and we'll be doing an update with the film industry, another area that clearly had to hit pause for quite some time last year, but is resuming activity. So we'll do a check-in with our local film officials on that. And until I see you again, thanks and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.